I absolutely agree with what you said in terms of care in the last year of life. We know that in Scotland, 95% of people who are in their last year of life will have contact with A&E, GP out of hours, or the Scottish Ambulance Service. And that's not because their needs are being met and they're comfortable. That's because they're having acute needs that are not being met by the care that they have at that moment in time. If you're saying that 95% of people in a country have acute unmet needs during their dying phase, we're not doing enough anticipatory care planning to take that step back and make sure that people have got a plan, have got medication in place, have got the security to know that if something goes wrong, there is help for them. And I think that until you can adequately say we have delivered excellent care to everybody who needed it in Scotland, and then there is a small percentage of people who would still choose, in spite of the fact that their care needs are being met, that they have dignity, that they have a pain-free approach to the end of life, that whether they choose assisted suicide at that point, it's a legitimate choice. But at the minute, we don't have a legitimate choice because we haven't optimised the care that we were already able to give and that's already legal to give. And I think that until that's done, choosing to change the law to allow for people to have an assisted death is a false choice. It would be akin to saying, you know, my morning commute is terrible because it takes me ages to get there, so, you know, what I need is a helicopter. No, what I need is buses or potholes to be fixed in the road. I need the basics to be done and the basics to be gotten right before we have a discussion about whether or not a helicopter would be a very good choice for me. It's, you know, we're not getting the basics right for everybody, and until we do that, we shouldn't be in a position to consider this.
Yes, I'd just briefly like to preface what I've got to say, in fact, preface everything else that I say in terms just to explain SPPC's position as an organisation. So assisted dying raises obviously issues of a moral, personal and ethical nature, and those are issues upon which many of our member organisations can't take a specific position. So, for example, our membership includes all the health boards, all the IJBs, a whole range of different charities, the hospices, professional associations. So SPPC therefore doesn't adopt a position in principle, either in support or in opposition to a change in the law. But we do aim to critically review and present a view on the specific provisions of the proposed bill, such that if the bill is passed, then harms, particularly to vulnerable people and to the practice and provision of palliative care, are minimised. So that's just by way of context. So in our submission to the committee, SPPC raises the idea of contextual safeguards. So there's a lot in the bill about procedural safeguards, but people make decisions within a wider context, and that influences perhaps the choices that they will make. And in our submission, we're very clear that good, timely access to high-quality care is an important safeguard. I would echo what colleagues have said. I mean, palliative care, you've heard about the deficiencies, and I've been in this room talking about the deficiencies when there was a previous bill, and the one thing that everyone in this debate agrees is that palliative care needs to be improved. So palliative care needs to have more investment and to be assigned a greater priority, regardless of, you know, the fate of this particular piece of legislation. But certainly in our submission, it's our view that if people are considering the future and making choices, it is inevitable that some of them will be influenced by their perception or the reality of the care and support which they and their carers may need to face the time coming ahead. So we don't think that you can separate out the context, and palliative care is a really important part of the context that people are dealing with when they're approaching the end of life.
I should also at this point make the point that Marie Curie takes a neutral position on assisted dying campaigns, neither for nor against the change in the law. Our concerns are around equity and around the best possible end-of-life experience for everyone in Scotland, no matter who you are, where you are, what your diagnosis is, or how old you are. And I think all of those things are important because they all of those factors do currently have an impact on how you experience the end of your life. We released a report last week which says that 10,400 people who die in Scotland are dying in poverty now each year. And that's an increase from the last time we did this study, from 2019, of nearly 2,000 people. That is going to have an impact on how you experience your last years, months, days, weeks of life. Your social circumstances, your economic circumstances are all going to have that impact. And then also there is the care and support that you can access. Is it really tolerable to any of us that somebody might choose an assisted death because they haven't been able to access the palliative care or the social care that they need that would make them comfortable? And that is a question that we all, whether we're sitting this side of the table as you know, academics and campaigners and people trying to develop policy solutions, or as practitioners, whether we're sitting on your side of the table as MSPs, should be really, I suppose, trying to answer about that context in which people die. It's hugely important. And the question around assisted dying is whether and how it would or can improve people's experience of end of life. But for most people, assisted dying will not be relevant to their experience of the end of their life. Experience from, you know, kind of evidence from other countries shows us that a really small proportion of people choose an assisted death. So for most people who die in Scotland, it's these other factors, including palliative care, both specialist palliative care and generalist palliative care, and the equity of access to that care, so that your choice is not being dictated to because you live in a rural area and therefore it's harder for you to you know, access the specialist care that you might need, or you are dying in poverty and therefore your circumstances make it difficult for you to access the specialist palliative care you need, or you have trauma in your background and therefore don't trust the services and find it difficult to access the services that might help you have a better end of life. That shouldn't be something that is making people want to choose an assisted death, and that is what we ought to be focusing on improving.